Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
It's Keith Grieve's show on latenightsportsradio.com. It's me, your illustrious host here, Keith Grieve from 87sportsfans.com. It is the April 18th, 2016 edition. We have an action-packed show. Everybody says that. They don't always mean it, but this time I mean it. We're going to be going through the MLB and NBA playoff scoreboard. Share with you my thoughts on Kobe's last game last week. But first, we're going to lead it off with some NFL draft talk. And joining me is Benjamin Allbright from CBS Sports, and also, is it 13:40 a.m. in Denver? Did I get that right?
Yes, it is.
All right.
13:40 a.m.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us.
No, not a problem. Anytime, brother.
All right. So, we're getting edgy now, right? It's almost like a week and 2 days before the draft. Everyone's like starting to get the tension is building, and the Rams kind of shot the first shot last week with their trade, and it's not surprising, I guess, what they had to give up to move up in the draft. But I'm thinking to myself afterwards, and I'm like, gosh, I mean, it's like, the Rams are not a team, at least to me anyway, that's like, I don't know, a player or two away from contending. Offensively, maybe. Maybe there's something on defense I'm not seeing, but it seems to me like to give up that many picks in this draft. I mean, these QBs coming out, I'm sure one or two will hit, but no one's really jumping on this is the guy you can build your franchise around. It's not like these guys are like Jameis Winston last year, or even Marcus Mariota, who was a little bit of a wild card. But none of these guys really blow the doors off anybody before the draft. Is this really the right move, in your opinion, for the Rams to go up in this draft?
Well, it's not the move that I would make, but let me play the devil's advocate here for a second and take the contrarian stance. Isn't that what we do in sports talk radio anyway?
Right.
If you look at it through the prism of the Rams and the trade that they had with Washington a few years back, where they moved back and allowed Washington to get up and get RG3 there at number 2, right?
Right.
If you look at it as they recouped all those picks and then they turn around and paid that forward, it's basically like the Rams made a trade to move from number 2 in the Andrew Luck draft to number 1 in this draft to ensure that they got the quarterback that they wanted. Oh, and by the way, they stockpiled themselves a bunch of defensive talent along the way. Viewed through the lens of a 5-year window, the trade, you can rationalize that trade a little bit and say, well, this isn't so bad when you look at what they did overall. Now, 5 years down the road, when they don't have all those picks and they're not able to stockpile and replace players, that might be a problem. But, in the interim and right now, I don't think it's that bad a move. The Rams are a team, I can tell you, the front office feels like they're a quarterback away, whether or not they actually are. They feel like they are. This is a team that did pretty well when Case Keenum was throwing the football last year. Nick Foles statistically was the worst quarterback in the league, and they still finished 7-9 despite having those two quarterbacks helm the team. So maybe the Rams aren't as bad as we all think. Maybe the cupboard isn't as bare as we all think. And maybe this is a team that can compete if they get the right quarterback in there. I'm not sure that this draft has that quarterback. I think Carson Wentz, given a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, could turn into something special, but that's gambling on a couple of years down the road. Viewed through that lens, I don't think the trade was great, and it's certainly not one I would ever make, giving up 6 draft picks to move to number 1.
So do you think Jeff Fish will be around to see whoever they pick mature?
I think so in the interim. I know that the ownership there in St. Louis really likes him. They really like Les Snead. They really like Jeff Fisher. I know the fans, and they get a lot of derision around the league from those two guys, but the reality is the front office loves them and loves the football culture that they bring to the table. So I think they're going to be around a while. Of course, he just signed that extension, so I think he's got 2 or 3 more years minimum, unless he just really, really craps the bed.
Yeah, it's funny because the fans are the fans, right? But the fan base can bark loud enough to change people's opinions in the front office, right? You think so?
The fan base can bark loud enough if they stop spending. It's not the barking loud, it's the silent stop spending that really gets you every time. As soon as those revenues go down, well, then it's time to start looking at things. But I think Ram fans got a little spoiled. I mean, you think about it, the Rams were a 2 to 3 win team under guys like Spagnuolo and Linehan and, guys like that. They haven't really been a great team since the late Martz era. So,
Right.
reality is this is a team that went from nothing to being a team that's 500 in one of the toughest divisions in football. The Arizona Cardinals have gotten really good. The Seattle Seahawks, we all know, are very good. And the Niners were good just a couple of years ago. So I think that Fisher and them have done a good job given what they've had. I just don't think the results have played out because they're, unluckily in one of the toughest divisions in football.
How much do you think this had to do with them being in L.A. for the first year? How much of being, in Tinseltown and we're back, and how much do you think that played into making this trade?
I think it may be part of it, but I can tell you, I know the Cronkies. They own several sports teams here in Denver, and I'll tell you, they're not really what you would call Stan is not what you call a meddlesome owner. He really isn't. He hires people to make those decisions for him. Now, one could make the argument that maybe he doesn't hire the right people given the success rate of the current teams that he owns, but he's not really a meddlesome owner. So I don't know that directive came from there. There's the possibility of that. The marketability of having that pick and all that could certainly play into it, but I didn't get that impression from having spoken with them, and I don't get that impression now.
Okay. All right, so now, usually this stuff goes down on draft day, and, it gives you something to talk about while you're waiting the 15 minutes per pick for the picks to be made. Do you see any other top 15 trades happening on draft night?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely do. I think it's going to be a very active draft, maybe one of the most active drafts in recent memory. I think you've got teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, the New York Jets, both have expressed interest in moving up, trying to get a quarterback. I think the Titans are trying to move forward again to get the guy that they want. I think they stockpile picks, and I think they want to move maybe a little bit back up to get the guy they want. I think the Cleveland Browns are a team that's looking down, move down, and maximize the number of draft picks that they get. And there's the San Francisco team in there that's kind of a wild card. They were previously looking at maybe one of those two quarterbacks falling to 7. That's probably not going to happen now, so they could be active as well. So I could see as many as 3, maybe even 4 trades in the top 15 when all said and done.
Oh, wow. The curious position, this is kind of off the cuff, I'm just looking at the draft order and just coming to my mind, is Jacksonville picking 5. I mean, now, yeah, you say the Jaguars, they haven't really done much, but the arrow, I don't know, do you agree? I think the arrow's pointed up for that team.
I think it certainly has the potential to be. Bortles started to mature late in the season last year, really looked sharp. Those young receivers that they've got, Hearns and Robinson, look really good. They got a decent young offensive line. They're generating a pass rush. You got to remember, their first-round draft pick from last year didn't even play.
Right.
Dante Fowler, he's going to be back this year. They're a total wild card who they're going to take. I think it's probably either going to be Ramsey or Jack, whoever falls to them there. It could be one of the other defensive players. I think they're looking to continue to finish out that defense. But, it's just a tough thing. Total wild card. I do not have any read on what they're going to do there at number 5.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting just to watch. All right, so everyone, the talk of the draft is the quarterbacks, as it tends to be in every draft, even if there's not a stellar class. And there seems to be a lot of people that believe whether it's Wentz or Goff that's the guy, and then everybody else is kind of a 2 to 3 year developmental plan. So how do you rank the quarterbacks? I know that's kind of your specialty, right? Is the quarterback position?
That's the position I know. It's the position I played, so it's the one I tend to evaluate, I think, a little bit better than the others. I certainly spend more time on it. I have them ranked Carson Wentz number 1, Paxton Lynch number 2, and then a very distant number 3, Jared Goff.
Wow. So what is it about Lynch that makes you put him up there?
Well, he's a guy that does well when the play breaks down. He's a guy that does well outside of structure, which is a lot of plays in the NFL these days with the advent of the massive pass rush. You just don't get as much time as you used to. So how well a quarterback plays outside of structure, not just hitting the progressions, but when the pass rush gets there, you step up in the pocket and you're forced to read on the move. Paxton does that very well. Carson does that very well. Jared Goff does not do that well at all. And then Jared Goff is also a skinny, small-handed air raid quarterback. I just don't understand the hype here. The guy compares as a prospect probably to, Sam Bradford or Geno Smith. Just not that elite quarterback prospect everybody's making him out to be.
So, but everyone is talking about the level of competition. How much stock do you put in that?
None. Zero whatsoever. A guy either has the tools to play or he doesn't. You look at other guys who have had that lower level of competition. I mean, off the top of my head, Steve McNair, Kurt Warner, Joe Flacco more recently, all guys that played at the exact same level or lower than what Carson Wentz is playing at. So I think that argument is ridiculous. You either have the tools to play in the league and you have the right coach to develop you, or you don't.
Right. I mean, I want to say, like, and I totally agree with what you're saying. If you have the tools, you have the tools, but it's got to affect the learning curve. No, I mean, if you're playing against a level of competition where your margin for error is so much less, I mean that's got to play some part.
There's certainly processing and speed of the game and that kind of thing, getting a guy caught up to the speed of the game. But let's turn that over to the flip side. The Southeastern Conference is the best conference in football. Tell me how many great quarterbacks have come out of the SEC in the last decade. What are the top quarterbacks that have come out of the SEC in the last decade? I mean, what are we looking at? Matt Stafford, Jay Cutler?
Yeah, if you want to throw Cutler in there.
I'm just putting SEC quarterbacks out there. I mean, and so what I'm saying is that you've got quarterbacks that are coming out of the fastest, most defensive thought process league in the United States, and these guys are, we just don't have that. We don't see that success rate in the NFL. So right off the bat, I mean, while that sounds like common sense to say that there's something to that speed of the game argument, you turn around and look at it from the other side. Well,